my God.
All right, I'll put it on the list.
Nate would come over. We would have Game of Thrones parties at my first apartment.
Oh yeah, I'd bring Dragon's Milk over.
Dragon's Milk, yeah, we had things. Oh yeah,
Sounds
we'd make a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
I think my first, from what I can remember, were the two movies I remember kind of back to back. I don't remember which one I watched first, but they were the Jim Henson Dark Crystal.
Dark Crystal. Okay, have you seen the new one?
No, the series on Netflix.
Yeah.
I have not yet. And then the other one, and it's still one of my top 10 movies. It's in my list. Labyrinth.
Okay. Yeah.
Love Labyrinth, dude. Yeah. Like, oh man, I remember. And I think when I was a kid, growing up, I would kind of get the two conflated.
Yeah.
Because I watched them around the same time, and they're both Jim Henson, and like, so I would like cross them over and like, wasn't this character? And get them confused. But now, I mean, obviously, it was like as I was older, I like watched them, and I was like, oh, okay, it's two separate movies. But yeah, Dark Crystal and Labyrinth is still one of my all-time favorites. Yeah. Welcome to Culture Copia, the podcast where we discuss all things pop culture, from the movies and games we loved as a kid to new releases and everything in between, and just about anything else that pops in our heads. Rob, Greg, you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
What about you?
Well, you mentioned Labyrinth. I was thinking Labyrinth. David Bowie.
Yeah.
The whole thing with the swamp was creepy. Jennifer Connelly, I think that's her name. Very iconic. And then some cartoons. He-Man comes to mind. As a kid, I was watching these kind of early on Japanese animation things like He-Man, for example. Thundercats.
Would that be one?
Yeah.
I had a lot of that stuff around my house too. My mother's a fan of like fantasy stuff and fantasy art, and so she always kind of encouraged that genre for me and my brother as we were like picking out stuff to watch and movies. So those are the first two I can remember.
My dad was always into that stuff too, fantasy and sci-fi. So I grew up watching a lot of Star Trek, and then a lot of like Xena Warrior Princess and like Legend of Hercules. Back in the early 90s.
Yeah, that's
a lot of that.
That's really cool. I was kind of brought up early thinking like that stuff's like cool to think about. It's cool to like engage in fantasy and D&D and this kind of. Some other kids I used to hang out with that were a few years older than us were into Dungeons and Dragons. I remember that. Pretty impressionable too. But we also had a bunch of interesting fantasy books hanging around the house when I was a kid too. My mom is into Wiccan stuff, so there's like some spell books hanging around and fantasy books. So. The door was open on that stuff.
You need to talk to our friend Julie. She's actually going to come on one episode.
Yeah, coming up our holiday special. Our holiday special.
And I have to correct myself. I got to take it back. I think the first fantasy like movie I was ever exposed to was the original Clash of the Titans.
Oh.
Now that I think about it a little more and think about what I grew up watching with my dad, I think it was Clash of the Titans.
That's not fantasy. That's a historical documentary.
Yeah. So is Passion of the Christ, I guess. You look at it that way. I mean, shit. Even Star Wars, a long time ago.
What did you think of the new one?
New what?
Clash of the Titans.
Was Liam Neeson in that?
I think he was. Okay. He was in that part, like series at least. He played.
I'm a sucker. He did. I'm a sucker for Liam Neeson, man. Like, I know he just does a lot of like cheesy action flicks nowadays, but like, I don't know, man. Like, there's something about me. Maybe it's my age or just like part of my upbringing, but like, I love a cheesy action flick.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, really, every movie with Liam Neeson's just like. Should just be titled Liam Neeson Does Work, because it really it's just like what you go see a Liam Neeson movie just to watch him kick somebody's ass.
Right. Yeah.
Speaking of, we just talked about we were talking about Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul in the last episode. Have you seen the movie Nobody?
No.
With Bob Odenkirk?
No.
Oh, dude. It's basically him in like a Liam Neeson type role.
I heard it was really good,
dude,
actually.
It's so fucking good because it's not what you'd expect from him, and it's just Bob Odenkirk kicking ass. Like, imagine him in like a Liam Neeson type role.
No shit.
Yeah. Greg kind of reminds me of Bob Odenkirk sometimes.
Huh?
I can see that in a way.
Okay. I'll own it.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Who the hell is Bob Odenkirk?
Better Call Saul.
Mr. Show with Bob and David.
Okay.
Yeah.
Better Call Saul. Got that part.
Yeah.
Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah.
All right.
He
all
plays
right.
he plays Saul Goodman.
Saul Goodman.
Bob Odenkirk.
He
no
was
disrespect, Bob. I don't know.
But was he not a writer on SNL?
Yeah, I think he was for a while.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I think so. He's doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's your favorite, like, okay, within the fantasy genre, what is, like, one of your favorite stories?
Oh God. Oh, Lord of the Rings obviously comes to mind, and The Hobbit. And I'm
Hobbits
talking
are
about not even just like the movies. I like the Lord of the Rings films a lot.
Yeah.
The Hobbit films I thought were pretty good. I really enjoyed the book though.
Yeah.
Any Tolkien, like I'll pick that up and read it, and I never used to be that way, dude. Honestly, like back in like middle school, high school, and stuff, I remember trying to read that stuff, and I was like, "Ooh, this is lame. This is boring."
Okay, so tying it in, you ever see the memes where they take the old Lord of the Rings, and it's that scene where
The old, like the animated.
the old animated from
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the 70s, it's the cartoon,
I
and
think
it
that was
is
didn't Hanna-Barbera?
Bilbo and Frodo, and Bilbo's smoking, and he blows that cigarette, and like
Yeah.
this like Snoop Dogg comes out like fucking like the wizard, you know, it's like, what's up, homies, what's up?
Yeah.
Nice.
I thought he was giving up the smoke. Isn't that what he's talking about?
I've seen a meme like that where Gandalf pops out when the smoke cloud goes by and Gandalf shows up.
Well, and it's funny because in
Sort of
the
got that
movie
good.
Half Baked, you
Yeah.
remember Snoop Dogg was in it.
Yeah.
And they come up, and he was like, he was like that little
the scavenger.
Yeah,
Scavenger smoke. Oh, so
damn
that's-
scavenger.
You know we sell this stuff. I just quit smoking yesterday.
Yeah, it's a shame. I just quit smoking yesterday.
I gotta get up out of here.
I don't know, man. Like, I also really really enjoy like the Harry Potter books and the films.
Okay.
Yeah. That was one of my, like, I remember 5th grade, one of my favorite teachers, Mrs. Byer. Shout out to Mrs. Byer. Hopefully she's listening. We actually read that. We read the first Harry Potter, the Sorcerer's Stone,
Yeah.
or the Philosopher's Stone, as it was known in the UK. But we read that as a class together, and it got me kind of interested in, honestly, just reading in general. I never used to like to read.
Yeah.
I really didn't, you know. And then I was like, dude, I didn't know books could be fucking awesome. You know, like, I thought books were lame. Like, no, this is cool.
Yeah. The Game of Thrones books are pretty good. I read the first one.
You know, I never got into them. I would probably enjoy them now.
Have you watched Game of Thrones?
I stopped watching around like season 4.
Really?
Yeah. Well, okay. I made the mistake early on. So I didn't watch it like right when it came out.
Okay. We've been following it, Nate.
Yeah. I didn't watch it right when it came out. I was like, it had already been out for like maybe 3 seasons or so. Sorry, Greg.
You're good.
And then I got into it. I kind of binged it, but I made the mistake that everybody told me not to. Like, don't get attached.
Oh, yeah.
Don't get attached to characters because everybody fucking dies in this show, and you never know who. And I did, like, immediately. I was like Robert Baratheon was like my dude. And I was like, I fucking love this guy. And then I was like, no. And then
I felt that way too, but I was more upset about Ned
Stark. He was the other one that I was like, oh, well, at least he's sticking around.
Man,
I was like, motherfucker.
When they killed Ned Stark, that's when I was in on the show.
Yeah.
Not that I was happy about it because that was my boy.
Yeah.
I liked how he was like the lawful good of that game, that world. But at that point, I realized these writers will do anything, and it kept it interesting to me. And I dig on that kind of genre. When I might be disappointed, like I'm okay with that.
I mean, I stuck around for a little bit, but it got to the point where like time and time again, I was like, dude, every character I like is like, and I think
okay, but so to an extent, but then they do kind of keep the ones over time. Like Tyrion makes it to the ends,
true.
You know, and like I was glad to see that.
Yeah.
You know, like some of the main. Like the real, you know, Jon Snow makes it to the end. Spoilers.
Yeah, that was
been a few
my
years.
that was my dad's favorite. He liked Jon Snow.
Yeah.
I see, and again, my dad was super. He watched it all the way through. He loved all that like fantasy stuff, and I think like when Arya left the Hound, I was like, well, fuck, dude, the Hound was one of the last people I really, really liked.
You know, he's got a really good. You want to hear how his story ends up?
And I know
because he's got a pretty good story.
Yeah, some people told me, and I was like, oh shit. And I thought about going back and rewatching, but like spoilers, by the way. I mean,
he's one of my favorite characters.
We're gonna probably get into more.
You know, I don't know.
I love the Hound.
just there's some of the clips that you go back and see. Like one of them is like. He's like in that restaurant and it's Lannister people and he's got Arya with him.
Yeah.
And he's like, he just fucking like, I'm going to take that chicken.
Yeah.
and the guy's like, oh, really? And he's like, what makes you think that? He's like, actually, I'm going to take 2 chickens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he ends up killing everybody.
Yeah.
Dude, it's just, it's.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
There's so many. There's so many.
Yeah. If you like, I mean, you like Lord of the Rings type stuff, right, Greg?
Okay, do this. Do yourself this.
I haven't seen any of them.
No?
Watch the first episode to completion, and if you are not
of
hooked,
Game of Thrones,
and if you are not hooked, then you're probably not gonna like it.
Yeah. Okay.
Because for me, you said when they killed Ned Stark.
So when they killed Ned Stark, that locked me into it. I watched the first episode. I was like,
"See, we are giving it away."
Cool.
So I don't want to get there's so much to the story.
I'll forget by the time I watch it.
There's so much to it, but you really should
so
watch it because it is so. Yeah, there's so many characters.
The intrigue between the characters pulled me in.
The reason why I say that is the way the first episode ends. And I don't want to spoil that because that for me, how that first episode ends, that's when I was hooked because I was like
left you one more.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But so other than like Game of Thrones, what are some fantasy games that?
Fantasy games?
Yeah. So I can't. Would you consider Hogwarts a fantasy? Because that was the like.
Oh yeah.
I would. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
it's
all
like
in that fantasy
magic
realm.
world.
Yeah, for
Dude,
sure.
that's an awesome game.
That game's great. I got that game, and I'd probably still be playing it if I didn't pick up Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
We could talk about that too. Great fantasy game.
I've heard a lot about it. So I don't know anything about it though. I haven't even like looked at it. So what's the premise? Is it like a third person or is it a?
Well, okay. So from like a game perspective, engine and stuff, it's a strategy game, and you get to turn based. You attack, like, you've got 5 people in your group, and you'll fight 5 more people, and each one takes a turn attacking each other. So it's not twitchy, it's like strategy based.
And when you say 5 people, is it NPCs or is it actual players?
What's interesting is you can play with actual players if you want to online.
So you got like
meet with other folks.
So you got like factions then of like 5 people.
Well, it's a party. So
a party, okay.
You run a storyline essentially. The story goes that you're abducted by this basically alien race, and they put something in your head. But their ship has problems and it crashes. And now you don't know what the hell is going on. You get out of the ship, everything's burning and on fire. These aliens are now on fire, and you got to figure out, why are you here? Why did they take you? And who is this other person that's coming out of the rubble? And now you start to put a party together. And so the game's very open-ended as to which way you want to play it. And this is one of the things I like about it. You could play it good and save everybody. You could play it bad and throw them under the bus. The game just doesn't really put you on like a particular path.
Okay. So the other characters that are in your party are actual other players then?
They can be.
They can be.
You can play multiplayer and match in a lobby, but they don't have to be.
So is there like different classes like in other things? Like you got like a warrior and like a barbarian and a bard kind of thing?
So this game takes Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rules and applies it.
Okay,
and
so
then
this
they
is
modify it a little bit.
Okay, so this is the game that Dungeons & Dragons, they released like some of their proprietary like games or instructions and stuff on how the game is played, right? Like the actual board game. right?
So Dungeons and Dragons, I guess maybe a year ago or so, took a lot of their stuff, their engine, their IPs, their basically that's it, like their guides, and they open sourced it essentially. They said to the community, you can use all of this without having to pay us anything. And we promise we're not going to pull the rug out from under you. Because that's kind of what happened with these guys is a lot of people have built a business around the Dungeons and Dragons toolkit for making their fantasy games extensions, and then Dungeons and Dragons decided to like change the licensing on people, making them essentially have to either pay Dungeons and Dragons a lot of money or get out of business, and the community went nuts, so they changed their ways quickly, and they said, we're going to guarantee you, community, that we will not do this again by open sourcing this, so we can't do it again legally. So I'm not sure if this is what Baldur's Gate then uses and applies to their game, but they take that rule system, they tweak it a little bit and go forward. A buddy of mine who's obsessed with D&D was telling me they're going to use this as, there's another version of D&D coming out called D&D All or something? D&D 1. It's D&D 1. That's the new one coming out. And supposedly they're going to take what worked from Baldur's Gate as well for some little mechanics like running around and apply it to that. But that's, rumors and scuttlebutt.
Gotcha. So that's why it's so popular right now, because everyone that I know that's gaming right now is like talking about this game. Like they're like, it's fucking amazing. And is that part of the reason it's got that Dungeons and Dragons like
it's
aura about it?
That's what's pulling me in, because I like these RPG type of games. I like fantasy games. Fantasy, it nails fantasy. The world feels great. All the characters are voice acted. They're interesting. They're funny. They're evil. You care about them. And then that's wrapped on top of like a really fun mechanic engine to play on top of. So they really just brought it all together.
So it's like, is it a third person kind of view, kind of like a Diablo or a
I'd say it's like,
or it's World of Warcraft.
It's like you're looking at the character running around. You can zoom around the character, but you can't see through their eyes. So I guess third person would be the way to put that. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You guys ever seen Onward, the Disney Pixar movie?
Yes.
Yeah. Like honestly, like if just talking about like fantasy and like D&D type stuff. Like, have you seen that?
I haven't seen Onward, no.
Dude, watch it.
I know. I'm gonna leave with a list of things to catch up on for this podcast.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, as far as a modern example, and like something that like, I mean, I love Disney movies. I love Pixar. And like it came out and I was like, I don't know. And then I watched it and I was like, dude, that was actually pretty fucking good. It's like the main character's like elves. And it's in this like D&D style world. There's like centaurs and dragons and kinds of shit like that. But like in a modern day, it's like they have cars and electricity and shit. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. It's pretty cool.
Is that with Chris Pratt?
Yeah, it's Chris Pratt and Tom Holland.
And it's like he's a monster.
He's like, they're elves.
Elves, that's right. Right. Yeah.
And they try to use.
Then there's like a little bit of magic and
It's like mixing like modern day like science and like magic at the same time.
So now that would be cool. Sweet. That would be cool. Can you imagine like a modern day like? I mean, one of the things I like about Game of Thrones is it's set back in the days of dragons and folklore and all that, but flip it on its head and put it into a It'd be like BioShock.
That's kind of what, that's kind of what Onward does. Is like they're living in like a modern house in like the suburbs and shit. You know? So it's pretty cool. Yeah, pretty cool. I enjoy it. Yeah,
that's a good one. I don't, dude. There's just so much to talk. I mean,
there are. I mean, the fantasy, for me, it's interesting where it goes for people, and I'd be curious to hear what you guys think. For me, fantasy primarily goes back into games, and I experienced a lot of that content through video games and MMOs and novels. Originally, I read a lot of like fantasy books as a kid. There was a series called Dragonlance that I really liked.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember Aragon?
From the Ranger?
It was the dragon. It had John Malkovich, I think, was in it. Or no, Jeremy.
Yes.
It came out around Harry Potter.
Oh, this is familiar.
Yeah, I kind of do.
And I forget how did it. I think John Malkovich was fucking.
No, I think you're right when you said Jeremy Irons.
Jeremy Irons. Maybe it is Jeremy Irons.
I think it was. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
He's like a dragon rider. Yeah. And like the dragon they had got.
Oh my god, dude.
Dude, that was a good. Dude, I wish they would have continued with that because it was based on some books, right? And if I remember correctly, it was about this kid who was born and not knowing who he was or something like that, and the evil lord of the world was he ruled with an iron fist and suppressed his people, and he somehow comes in contact with a dragon egg, and like he raises this dragon and starts to like battle the evil guy, and at the end there's like this epic battle between the dragons, and it ended with the all intentions of picking up on a second movie. Like it was pretty obvious.
Yeah, I was 2006, and you were actually right on both counts. Jeremy Irons and John Malkovich are both in it.
Okay, so I thought so.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I haven't thought about that in a long time.
That's right. Okay, so John Malkovich is like the evil lord guy, and Jeremy Irons is like his dragon rider instructor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love John Malkovich so much. And Jeremy Irons.
John
Actually, honestly.
Malkovich. Have you ever seen that the guy from SNL, Bill Hader?
Oh, Bill Hader.
His impression of John Malkovich.
No, I haven't, but he's really good.
He does an impression of John Malkovich in front of John Malkovich, and John Malkovich's like, I don't sound anything like that. He's like, no, you talk very much like this. You know what I mean?
That's funny. I don't know. I mean, like, you say like that's kind of like, Nate, that was your exposure to like these fantasy worlds and stuff. I think film. I think film was where
film would have been mine.
Yeah, like growing up, I watched a lot of movies with my dad, and I think maybe even music. Honestly, some of the old like Greg and I were just talking about this, like like some of the old '70s rock bands.
Yeah, bands like Rush.
Okay, yeah.
Rush has a song about Rivendell. Blue Oyster Cult.
Right.
Yeah. Led Zeppelin, the immigrant song,
yeah.
About like Valhalla and things like that.
Right.
A lot of like Norse mythology and things like that.
Pink Floyd had a whole had an entire album.
Midnight Sea.
An entire album based on. It was a book called The Wind in the Willows.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a wisp in the willows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So either way.
Anyway.
That is like the Piper.
Yeah.
Peter Piper?
No, something about Piper. That's the name of the album, though. It's an early one. It's like Syd Barrett days.
Pink Floyd. Yeah.
It's like 1960s.
Yeah, the
something.
early,
very psychedelic stuff. But either way, this whole album was like pretty much a direct ripoff. Or an ode, we'll say,
the Piper,
to that story.
The Piper at the Gates of Dawn.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of those like 70s rock bands and stuff had like I said, Rush had a whole they did a lot, like Bytor and the Snow Dog. They had a song about Rivendell.
Right.
They had a few things like that. A lot of those prog rock bands, Pink Floyd, like you said, there's a lot of influence of like fantasy, and I think that's where I learned about some of that stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't know what Valhalla and stuff was until I heard the Immigrant Song by Zeppelin, and I was like, oh, okay, it's all about like the Norse, mythology and gods and things like that.
So getting on that subject, this is going to take you back. Growing up, my dad's favorite movie, he would always brag about it, was heavy metal.
Heavy metal.
Yeah, and I never knew what that was until I got older, because for obvious reasons he would never let us watch it.
I remember seeing like the artwork for it.
Yeah.
You're like, what's this?
Right.
There was here's another thing that we can't go one episode without referencing, but there was a South Park episode.
I know. Yeah,
right.
That's an epic.
The cat piss.
Yeah.
They were cheesing.
Cheesing. I'm cheesing my balls off. South Park did a lot of like fantasy. They obviously did the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's an epic episode too.
Episodes, and they had.
What are you kids doing?
They had the Imagination Land.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Episodes.
Is it fair to say that like, I mean, I've met and talked to a lot of different people who are fans of like the sci-fi genre. but you almost have to have a specific way of thinking to get into like fantasy.
Yeah.
There's some rules that you have to accept.
Yeah. and not for nothing, but I feel like most of the people I know that are like into like fantasy shit definitely smoke weed.
Yeah.
So good for the current company, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like I don't know if it's just maybe like your mindset, like being that type of person helps you kind of accept that those fantasy worlds and that realm and like, you know, what comes with that, or I don't know.
Well, I think so, because take Game of Thrones, for example. I mean, you recognize that they're living in this world that was the seasons are different, where it's, winters last for many years and summers last for many, and then you have like the builders, the first men, and they're the ones that build the wall.
Yeah.
And they prevent like the White Walkers and all the bad shit from coming down, but it's almost like the bad shit coming down is a way of like Mother Nature checking humanity in a way, kind of thing. And like, yeah, so there's certain rule, like you have to believe in and with Game of Thrones you have to believe in dragons, zombies.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Okay.
Afterlife.
That's like a cross of a bunch of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say also, and I've mentioned this before, but like Star Wars is just as much fantasy as it is sci-fi.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because
Yeah,
there's a certain you have to suspend belief. You
have to believe in metachlorians that are like tiny microorganisms that live inside you and they give you the power of the Force.
Which is like, I guess, a science fiction way to explain it, but really...
It's still fantasy.
Yeah, really, when you break it down, it's like, how much science is in that fiction. I mean, it's almost more of a fantasy, you know. Just kind of like wrapped in a science fiction.
We could talk about modern day fantasies. We couldn't really have that discussion without talking about all of the fucking Avengers and all that. Because is that not a modern fantasy?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Could you not
do that?
I mean, I would group it under fantasy. I mean, it's like an action, sci-fi. I mean, but right.
But it's at
still
its
kind of a
at
fantasy.
Its as I say, at its core, those superhero movies are the knight in shining armor,
magic,
slaying the evil dragon, and rescuing a damsel in distress.
Yeah,
right?
I
At
mean,
the end of the day,
fantasy
most
is
of it.
fantastic. Maybe that's where that word comes from. It's this idea of something outside the realm of normal behavior. And I mean,
Fantastic Four.
Dragons are fantastic. Iron Man, guy flying in a metal suit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Although you could sprinkle science on top of that, I think sci-fi is like a genre of fantasy. Perhaps it's like there's some
That's what I
rules
was
that
kinda thinking
might
myself.
match real life, but not necessarily
Right.
totally close. Like
Right.
think Star Trek. Was it forward thinking? Did we end up with iPads? I mean, perhaps, but still a lot of fantasy there. So for me, fantasy is like a wide genre of anytime I'm going to just suspend my disbelief for a minute and dip into a story world, that's getting into fantasy for me.
right.
Yeah. definitely.
So yeah, it's a wide label for me what fantasy is. So sci-fi, check. Lord of the Rings, fantasy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You guys remember the Page Master?
I do. That is a good one.
Yeah.
That I do. Like, did you ever see that?
No.
Macaulay Culkin.
Page Master.
Hell of a movie. You never saw
Macaulay,
that?
huh?
What?
Yeah.
Macaulay Culkin, Whoopi Goldberg.
Wait.
I think Patrick
Yeah?
Stewart.
Yes, he played the captain.
He was
Or
might have to see
played
this.
the pirate.
The pirate book. So it's
That's
Macaulay
this is a good-
Culkin.
Go ahead, tell it. This is a good story.
It starts off live action. He's on his bicycle. He's like a very like guarded
He's like a
kid, very worried about
grows
safety.
up in a bubble. Well, I think his parents are like that, right?
I think they were like urging him not to be.
Oh,
that
that's
way.
right. Okay, I think
Something
they were.
happened,
Okay, that's right. Something
and,
happened.
and he's on his bicycle. He gets caught out in this like terrible like monsoon rainstorm. Stops in a library.
But let's back up for a second, because he's on this bicycle is no ordinary bicycle.
No, it's like a safety bike.
It's
He's
like a
got,
safety bike. It's got like
headlights and an
reflectors and a
orange
headlight.
flag.
It's got flags, and it's like he's
very-
wearing a helmet and a reflective vest.
Oh,
and
jeez.
Very guarded kid. Goes into this library for shelter. Christopher Lloyd. plays he's the librarian. Turns out
I want to say I've seen this.
Yeah. Well, he like
he gets caught in a storm.
Yeah, he gets wrapped up in this like this fantasy world where he ends up he turns animated. And there's 3 books that like kind of help him along his way, and there's like a fantasy book, and it's Whoopi Goldberg. She's like a little fairy. And then like the adventure book, and that it's Patrick Stewart. He's a pirate, so it's kind of based on like Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. And then there's a horror book. It's like a zombie kind of like creepy book.
I don't know. I haven't seen this. This sounds pretty good.
And it turns out Christopher Lloyd, who was the librarian, ends up being like he's like the dark wizard or something. So he's like
This is going on the list.
Yo, dude, like
it's really good.
If you didn't like if you didn't grow up watching that, you gotta go back and check it out. Page Master.
Christopher Lloyd is right there with Back to the Future,
right? Yeah,
and Whoopi Goldberg, and then you got Home Alone right there running around. Yeah. So and Patrick Stewart is that Star Trek connection.
Sir Patrick Stewart.
Yeah. Who plays the voice of Frankenstein?
I think it was like some like not like a big star, like I think he was like a big voice actor, like one of those guys that did like a lot of voices in like the 90s, like TV and movies and stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool because you go through like the classic stories, right? And each one is like a lesson learned in life.
Yeah, speaking of that too, fantasy's kind of interesting because fiction too, fantasy and fiction. When you write fantasy, there's like some of the rules are thrown out the window for how proper or what you can say. Some of this commentary you can put in Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter, some of these books, you can say things in a fantasy context that you wouldn't necessarily be able to say in like a non-fiction book without getting a ton of canceling heat. So I do like that about fantasy as well. It's been a place where a lot of writers can express some ideas under like a safe context.
Yeah.
So, it's nice for that too.
Remember Legend, the unicorn movie?
I never saw that. That was a little bit before my time because if I'm not mistaken, it came in like 1980, 1981, something like that. Yeah. And
remember The Last Unicorn?
Kind of.
It was a animated one.
Yeah, I kind of do.
My sister loved that one. It freaked me out. Like it was kind of dark. And like, it was very weird to me.
It sounds familiar.
It does sound familiar. Yeah.
Legend it's live action. It's more along the lines of like Neverending Story and Willow.
Okay. Willow would be one.
Willow, Willow was a good one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, hell yeah. With Val Kilmer and Warwick Davis. Warwick Davis. I mean, for somebody who was typecast in like you're gonna play. Like trolls and leprechauns for the rest of your life. Like he made the most of it, I think. Yeah. Well, still does. I'm talking about him past tense. He's still alive, but like like he was just like, fuck it. All right, I'm gonna do the best leprechaun you've ever seen. Then you know what I mean? Like, like honestly, like why not?
Do you guys remember the Gummy Bears?
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
The Adventures of the Gummy Bears. And it was all kind of based on that like D&D style, like
Castles and Dragons. It was all based on that. Yeah,
did you ever watch that?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the animated show.
I wanted some gummy berry juice, man. I wanted a potion of that.
Right.
Everybody did. My own flask as a kid.
Right.
Well, in that same vein, the Smurfs.
Yeah, for sure.
Smurfs was kind of, like Gargamel and his castle and things like that. All like very, very, like a lot of fantasy aspects.
Well, could you say then, like, what about Fraggle Rock?
I was gonna mention that. Yeah, that was a good one. That's one of my favorites.
That's taking it back.
Oh yeah,
that was one of my favorites. Okay,
and then
on
there
that
was
note,
Eureka's Castle.
That's a good one.
I forgot about Eureka's Castle.
Do you remember today's special?
No.
So the show was they lived in it was like a department store, and after hours, the main character was a guy. He was a mannequin. He would come to life.
Dude, why does this sound so familiar?
Right.
And then you had Muffy the mouse.
This is sounding
was
really
a character.
What?
I'm looking it up right now because I got to see this. Why does this... Okay, kind of... Like... Wow. Okay, like... I want to say that I do remember it, but, like... I don't know, with, like, the little creepy puppet here? Yeah. I don't know. Like that. So you're going back a little bit then, right?
So I am a little bit older than Nate and I are a little bit older than both of you.
Right.
But yeah, so that would be we were going back.
It looks like early.
It was on Channel 9. It was on the same channel
Okay.
that you watch Sesame Street and shit on.
Right.
I must have missed that one. I don't know if
No?
they had the syndication. It was called Sesame Street though, because we had the Gummy Bears, Smurfs, Sesame Street, and then later Bob Ross would come on.
Yes.
Not fantasy, but it's memorable in that lineup.
That mouse looks familiar though.
Yeah, let me see.
That
Let me
looks
see.
familiar.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I mean,
You don't remember that?
it like I said, it looks sort of familiar, but I don't know, man.
It could have been a little bit before your time too, man.
Probably, it seems like one of those things that I saw and like probably creeped me out as a kid, and like I don't know. But you know, with a lot of those things, they tend to, you know, especially like since I was younger. You know, like I said earlier, you know, talking about like Labyrinth and like Dark Crystal and things like that, it all kind of like bleeds together, you know, like in my memory of like, you know, like I kind of, it looks familiar, but maybe I'm just thinking of something else that looks like that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and who knows, just because there's so much, you know, I don't know. I do remember watching as a kid those old Lord of the Rings, those animated movies though.
Mm-hmm.
Is The Hobbit part of that? Right.
Yeah.
I remember watching that in like 5th grade.
Yeah.
Oh, and we had to make a map. I don't know if we had to. I just remember that's what I did. Like just kind of like drew out a map.
Yeah. Of
the
like
storyline
of Middle Earth.
Yeah. And then like the teacher, you know, took the tea bags and like stained the paper and burned the edges and
nice.
stuff like that. Was just so cool. I'm like,
Yeah.
look at this old map I got. Cool. I made it. Like,
I mean, yeah. Harry Potter.
That's
Classic.
probably one of my favorites. So those are probably my favorite like fantasy movies.
Yeah.
Okay. And then obviously my favorite fantasy TV show would be Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Obviously. But I can't. I'm hard pressed to find another fantasy TV show or series that I can't really think of one. Can you?
lamb chops.
Lamb Chop sing along.
Lamb Chop.
This is a song
No
that
shit, we can't
never ends. It goes on and on. Yeah.
That might be copyrighted.
Well, I think so. It might be, but my performance is not.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
That's true.
So I think there's a loophole there.
Charmed would be another.
Yeah, see, I didn't get into
Talking
that
about
much.
like
But isn't that based on
That's-
like Disney characters?
Charmed.
Yeah.
No, that was the three.
No.
It's the three hot
True.
sisters
Right.
who were witches.
And who was on that? That was
the-
that Nev
so-
Campbell.
The original was
I'm
Shannon Doherty,
That's who I'm thinking of.
Alyssa Milano,
Yep.
and I can't think of the other one's name. God damn it. It's going to come to me. But Shannon Doherty ended up leaving, and then Rose McGowan came in.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
That was my dad used to watch that all the time. Again, he was into anything like fantasy sci-fi, but I think he also he really liked Alyssa Milano.
I guess we could put Star Trek in that. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
That would be the
More sci-fi, but yeah.
yeah.
Well, like you said, I mean, it kind of encompasses Holly Marie Combs. That was her name. Holly Marie Combs. That was the other sister in Charmed. She was my favorite always. I always liked her. But anything like that, Buffy, Angel,
Yeah.
Yep. Buffy. Watched a bunch of that one.
Yeah.
yeah,
That was a
I would
good one.
include all of those.
Okay.
I think what you were thinking, the Disney thing was kind of was it Once Upon a Time or something?
Yeah, that's something like that. Yeah. Huh.
It's a newer series.
Yeah.
Newer series. Yeah.
Another really good fantasy series that's on HBO is True Blood. I don't know if you guys have
Oh,
seen
yeah.
that.
Seen all
that
of True
is
Blood.
really good.
Yeah.
It's got vampires and werewolves and
True
fairies.
So,
I'm thinking for some reason Blue Blood or whatever popped. Like,
Oh,
I'm like,
Tom
wait,
Selleck?
Isn't that like a cop show?
Yeah.
We should have covered that on a horror. That's a
starring Tom Selleck's mustache and featuring Tom Selleck.
Yeah.
Yeah, True Blood's
True Blood's trippy. Yeah. Norwegian vampires, swamp vampires, like mixed with waitresses and werewolves. It's it's like a sexy romp of like undeads versus vampires. It's pretty good.
Like people are like not only like vampire blood like gets everyday people high.
Okay.
Right? So like
interesting.
It like
and then they've got True Blood, which is bottled vampire blood, essentially. So vampires in this world can walk into a convenience store and buy a bottle of True Blood. And they don't have to drink people in this world. And so the politicians have said, with the advent of True Blood, we're now integrating the cultures a bit. Vampires are among us, but we don't have to fear them. They drink True Blood now. And so some vampires are all about this, and they're drinking True Blood, which isn't as good as actual blood. A lot of them are like, this is water, But then there's some vampires who are not having that.
Yeah.
And so it picks up in the swamps of, what is it?
Louisiana?
Yeah, swamps of Louisiana. Is it? Following Sookie Stackhouse. She's a waitress. She works at this sketchy little diner in the middle of nowhere, and she
vampires
runs into
Well, and vampires are like extremely attracted to her for some reason. So that's a whole other part of the story. You find out that she's like a fucking fairy, and fairy blood is like super. And she falls in love with one dude, but Alexander Skarsgård.
Okay.
Tori's dreamboat of a man. Like he's like kind of like the bad guy.
I like his dad.
Is that the Norwegian vampire? Alexander?
Yeah. Well, he's the blonde.
Okay,
Yeah.
So cool. With this umbrella that we opened up, then my favorite fantasy would be story, I guess, would be Futurama.
Okay, I'll give you that.
One that is.
If we're including Star Wars and Star Trek,
I'll give you that. God, there's so many.
Yeah, I mean, so we did like the base level fantasy, like in the Dungeons and Dragons sword and spell slinging. Now we're moving into like a broader range. Futurama, fantastic. Oh, that's so funny, that show.
I think I've seen every episode because you can get it on Hulu.
Right.
And,
I'm working on finishing it up.
It's a shame that it keeps. It's because it's not being created anymore. I think
that's what I heard. It's not making new episodes.
Like Futurama. So it's had like 3 stints.
Right.
They keep bringing it back. It's like the 3rd time that they've gotten rid of it.
I need to. Just going back, I need to get into True Blood now because people had told me about it, but nobody ever like really laid out what it was about. That. I just always heard it was about like vampires. And shit.
The way you put it, Nate, like it's like
I got laid so many times watching that series. It's not fun.
I mean, the first season was pretty wild. There's a lot of fun stuff in there.
Yeah.
Well, because of Alexander Skarsgård.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt. Yeah, I'm right on, Nate. It didn't hurt.
I like Stellan, his dad. You ever see him? He was in like the Pirates movies. He played Bootstrap.
He was in Dune, and he was in Mamma Mia.
Bootstrap Bill. Okay.
Yeah, he's Bootstrap Bill. Yeah, he's in Mamma Mia. He's one of the 3 guys. He was in. He's in the Thor movies too.
Yeah.
He's a great actor. I love him.
But you and Amy should watch True Blood, dude. It is good. It's a good series.
Yeah,
like I've seen it twice. Tori and I maybe talk. Now that we're talking about it, we may go through it again.
Watch it again.
Yeah,
I do like to go
do
and
bad
rewatch
things to you.
Yeah, I want to do.
It's its own style, man. They nailed something there.
When you came in, the air went out.
It's so creepy,
and all the shadows are filled up with doubt.
Some of that is like Deliverance with vampires. It just gets this really
that's
creepy,
a good way to
hillbilly vibe.
Yeah, so that's a good way of saying it. It's like Deliverance with vampires. Yeah. And fantasy.
Boy, you sure you got some pretty veins.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it is. Well, and then what's crazy too is like humans are using like vampire blood for like drugs, and like it's like they get high off of it, and so like there's one where I think they like take it and dry it out and then snort it like cocaine and like some crazy shit.
See, I had no idea.
Too.
Yeah. I had no idea it got all into that and like the political stuff like you were kind of talking about.
It gets into a real political,
Yeah, see, now I got to go back and check it out.
Yeah, your favorite character is going to be Lafayette.
Yeah.
Oh, he's funny.
Yeah, he's the fucking best, dude. He's...
Yeah, I like anything like that. Any fantasy, sci-fi stuff, I'll always check that out.
So I don't want to give too much away, but
yeah, please don't.
Lafayette plays a cook. in a restaurant.
Okay.
And
In Louisiana?
in Louisiana.
Cajun.
Yeah. Okay. And
That sounds good.
Lafayette is a gay black man.
Okay.
And these rednecks come into the fucking restaurant.
Yeah.
And they complained about the burger that he had.
Yeah.
And he was like, "What's the complaint?" And the waitress is like, "They don't want any AIDS with their burger."
Oh shit. Yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna say something
So
stupid
he
like that.
comes back out and he was like, "Is there a problem? I heard y'all got a problem with my food." And he was like, "Yeah, we don't want no AIDS burger." And he was like, "Well, here at this restaurant, a burger comes with lettuce, tomato, pickle, onion, and AIDS. And if you got a fucking problem with that, you can leave or something." Okay?
Yeah.
So then I think a little while later they come in and they complained about like a soup or something. So he takes this spoon and fucking heats it up on the fucking on the burner and then sticks it back in. It's okay, it's good. He warmed it up, and then when he fucking so Lafayette's that's just one of many
That's kind of
awesome
like
scenes.
you ever see the Slammin' Salmon?
Ah,
The
yes.
Broken Lizard.
Yeah.
Like, you
What
ever
a
seen
great
that?
movie.
No,
Missed it.
yeah, you know, like,
Super Trooper guys, right?
Those,
Broken
yeah,
Lizard.
Super Troopers classic. Yeah.
if you like them, you need to see the Slammin' Salmon because it's those guys, but they work in
I
a
have
restaurant.
seen it. It's a restaurant movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
And when
Yeah,
he's
okay.
like, the one
It's got
dude,
what's his name from Green Mile?
Michael Clark Duncan.
Yes.
But that's kind of like you were talking about with the soup because like he's like the one guy, the guy that plays Foster in Super Troopers. He's like the chef.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Don't fucking say they said it was cold." And he's like, "Yeah, they complained about it." And he's like, "I'm gonna nuke the dick out of this." Like puts it in the microwave for like 15 minutes.
Right.
They're like pulling it out. He's got like tongs. Like he can't even touch the bowl.
It's like almost, it's like boiling.
I do like those movies where it's like a restaurant movie and there's a kitchen cast. There's another one called Waiting. with Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, Ratings of the classic.
Classic, man.
Have you ever watched The Bear?
Haven't seen
I've
Bear.
wanted to see that because one of my favorite actors of all time is in its main character.
Yeah,
Because he was in Shameless.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I forget the
I
actor's
forget
name.
his
He was
name.
Lip.
He was Lip in Shameless, and he's one of-
Jeremy White,
That might be it.
something like that. He, anybody who's ever worked in a restaurant, even for just a little bit of like stint, definitely highly recommend that.
Bear?
The Bear.
The Bear.
The Bear.
Okay.
It's on Hulu. It's a Netflix, or it's
like we've been
FX.
talking, though, Waiting and Slammin' Salmon. Like if you've ever worked in food,
Yeah.
you got because you'll
I'm
understand
sorry.
that.
Waiting
completely.
though, just some of the fucking
But
one-off
okay, I'll have to watch the Bear then.
things.
Yeah, The Bear is the same.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Waiting was ridiculous.
I think one of the
Bear?
thing was like sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine.
One of my favorite parts, and why I don't know how we got talking about like restaurant movies or fantasy, but is when the dishwasher's like trying to walk. He's like, you on the lady that's got an anger problem, and he's like, you should really calm down and you should do this and blah blah blah. And she's like, oh yeah. I
never thought of it that way.
Yeah. Now wash the fucking dish. She just like explodes.
He's
One of my
like,
favorites. Anyway,
Yeah, I like how that new guy, they don't let him talk in the whole movie. They keep shutting him up. They're
Until
keep
the
it quiet.
end. Right.
Then he flips out at the end.
Yeah.
The Bear, I mean, it's more of a drama, but there are some comedy elements to it. But they do a really good job of like even like little details you wouldn't notice or like wouldn't think about. He goes out back after the dinner rush to smoke a cigarette and he's drinking water, but he's drinking it out of like a to-go like soup container. Because like when you work in a kitchen, that's what you do. You just grab something and put fucking water in it and drink. You know what I mean? And it's like little details like that. Or like the first episode, he goes home after like making this food for people, like all this good food, and he goes home and makes himself like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Right.
And I'm like, for me, like being like a restaurant manager and working in that industry for 15, 16 years, I'm like, dude, that's exactly how it is.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to go home and cook anything.
yeah.
Right.
I want to just go home and grab
relax.
like a quick thing, a
Yeah.
quick little piece of shit, sandwich or something.
I just
can
need
throw together.
something in my stomach.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
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 But fantasy is just an awesome. I mean, like you said, it's fantastic. So really, the imagination is your limit to whatever a good fantasy can be. And I'm really looking forward to like the new up and coming House of Dragons, which is like the prequel to Game of Thrones. So they have a prequel. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I like them. But this. Have you seen House of the Dragon?
Yeah, I've seen some previews.
Dude, so they've got one season out, and they were supposed to come out with a new one, but I guess with the strike and all that, I don't know where it's at with production and all that, but...
who knows?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, it'll come out when it comes out. But the one thing is, it's really confusing because all the names sound the fucking same, so you're trying to do, like, and there's so many names. You know, like in the regular Game of Thrones, you had the Hound, and you had Joffrey, and you had, like, certain, different... You knew, who they were. But in House of the Dragon, all the names sound the same, so it's really hard to keep straight.
You kind of run into that with like Lord of the Rings too. Like you have Sauron, Saruman. Like Boromir, Faramir, like all these different. Yeah,
for sure.
So I don't know. I still haven't watched. Was it the Rings of Power? The Amazon series.
Amazon.
Oh yeah, I haven't either. I tried watching.
I heard it was really good. So.
Well, I think that might do it for fantasy, guys.
Yeah.
Guys, got anything else you want to add?
Negatory.
No?
Excellent genre. Jump into it. Let your imagination just, play for a while.
Yeah, have fun with it. Writing for fantasy is really a lot of fun, too, because you can do anything you want, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, so what do we got? Yeah, let Greg roll.
It's Greg's turn.
Next 2 episodes, right?
Yeah, we need the next 2, so we're going to see. What are we on there?
19.
Does that say 19? Oh,
That's a 19.
Speaking of Futurama, Matt Groening. Yeah.
Matt Groening, okay, cool.
Yes.
Simpsons. We're talking Simpsons. We're talking Futurama. What else are we talking?
Oh, he has like that Enchanted.
Enchanted's a good one. Yeah.
Oh, this is speaking of fantasy.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
Matt Groening, and you want to roll again?
Roll again?
Yeah. Okay. We'll do the next 2. Let's see what we got going.
3.
The 1960s.
Oh.
The 1960s.
That'll be cool.
That's a cool
Far
one.
out.
That'll be a good segue into Christmas, because we can start talking about the Christmas music from the 60s, because some of those are the classics, man.
In the movies.
Yeah.
Rankin Bass.
Yeah, and the Rankin Bass. Yeah, so that'd be a good one we could end with and segue into our Christmas episode. By the way, just to give you a little highlight of what's coming up, so we do have these next 2 episodes, and then we're going to do our Christmas special. We're going to be bringing on One Beer at a Time podcast, some friends of mine, and we're going to have another guest on. So we're going to have a bunch of us celebrating the holidays, because by the time this episode comes out, it will be right at Christmas. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We're really excited about ending the season and getting into season 3. We're going to be having some big changes coming up in season 3 with you'll not only be able to find us on the where you get your favorite podcasts, but you're also going to be able to get us on YouTube, and you'll be able to view some highlights and stuff from our Facebook account and from our Twitter as well. So
we're going to be out there.
So we got some big things coming up for season 3. Nate is going to be on full time with us, and we're really looking forward to it going forward. So thanks again, and we'll see you next episode.
Yeah.
See ya.
Whoop whoop.